Today, we talk about this legendary wrestler, the mayor of Knoxville, Kane. And if we're going to start this story, we have to go all the way back to 1990 when The Undertaker first came into the World Wrestling Federation. Because a lot of people don't know that before he made his debut at Survivor Series 1990 as The Undertaker, they were actually calling him Kane the Undertaker. And he wore a cape for at least one of his house show appearances before debuting at the Survivor Series 1990. So Kane was something that Brother Love, aka Bruce Pritchard, had come up with because he wanted a yin to his yang. And of course, they would end up dropping Kane and just making The Undertaker the iconic character that he became. But I feel it's important that you understand that this idea had been festering since 1990. So, Kane got his start really in WCW. It wasn't a very long run in WCW, but he made a few appearances here and there. You could kind of see the potential of what he could be. So the World Wrestling Federation would end up bringing him in and making him the character Isaac Yankem. That's a blast from the past. And he was Jerry Lawler's personal dentist. And it was basically his enforcer to take care of Bret the Hitman Hart for Jerry the King Lawler. It was a decent gimmick. They were still in that cartoonish phase of WWE. I mean, this is 94, 95 ish. And after the whole Bret Hart feud, the character really like fizzled out. So that was essentially like strike one for Glenn Jacobs, aka Kane. And he would get another opportunity once Kevin Nash and Scott Hall left, and he was actually the fake Diesel character again. A very short-lived character. Essentially, strike two for the iconic Glenn Jacobs, aka Kane character. And then they would kind of send him down to like Smoky Mountain Wrestling where Jim Cornette was. They didn't want to get rid of him, but they just didn't know how to use him or what character he would eventually become. And he was actually working under a mask down in Smoky Mountain Wrestling. So he'd gotten comfortable with the mask. And um because of the relationship between WWF and Jim Cornette, they would send um superstars down there to work to help out and whatnot. Well, a chance encounter between him and The Undertaker in the ring really helped him because the Undertaker saw something in this monster, as you would later know him as. And he's like, you got to remember this idea from 1990, Kane. Let's make this incredible big man, this iconic character, Kane. Let's make him my brother. So, as we all would see, Paul Bearer would start pushing the Undertaker's buttons and kind of reinserting himself alongside the Undertaker, and the Undertaker would finally turn on him. And then Paul Bearer would say, "Your brother's alive." And then we get that iconic moment at Bad Blood 1997 in St. Louis, which is where this Funko, exclusively by Fanatics, comes from. And it actually has the In Your House plaque in the case because it's the debut edition of Kane from that Bad Blood pay-per-view. And you get that iconic line, "It's gotta be Kane." Of course, he comes down to the ring with Paul Bearer, and another Jim Cornette idea. He rips off the cage with his brute strength, and you can just see the look in the Undertaker's eyes. He's confused. And without the Undertaker and his facial expressions, then of course Kane doing what he did, it really resonated. It really got the character over. Everybody understood how powerful this individual could be if it even scared the Undertaker. And what was really cool about the Kane character was they kind of left him alone because he was obviously working with the Undertaker and they were building towards that first encounter at WrestleMania 14. And they kind of left him alone and let that kind of simmer. And Jim Cornette was he was very heavily involved for like the first like 6 months of this character, really developing it, really putting the time and effort into moving the story along a line and coming up with ideas of what they could do to get the Undertaker to accept this match. And because people left him alone, he was able to develop this character, and he didn't have like 18,000 people in his ear. It was just, Paul Bear, Jim Cornette, The Undertaker, and Kane. And that's what made it special. And his debut elevated him to that main event level card because The Undertaker went to bat for him. He wanted to work with Kane because he saw something in Glenn Jacobs. And of course, Kane would go on to have a legendary run in WWF, whether it was his two encounters with his brother at WrestleMania 14 or 20, where it all begins again, his storyline with Matt Hardy and Lita, his tag team with Daniel Bryan, Team Hell No, his tag team with Rob Van Dam, his unmasking of the character, which added another layer to the character. because we all thought that he was burned and disfigured from this fire, and it was all in his head. And it just added another layer to his character when he finally took the mask off and we saw he was a normal looking human being. Yet another iconic moment in his career. You know, former world heavyweight champion, got to team with his brother the Undertaker, become tag team champions, got to feud with Mankind, got to feud with Vader. Um Former Intercontinental Champion, former Hardcore Champion, got to feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin and be in a first blood match at King of the Ring 1998 and win the World Wrestling Federation Championship. A former World Heavyweight Champion got to feud with Rey Mysterio and so many great wrestlers over the years. And of course, he is a Hall of Famer. He is the one, the only. It's gotta be Kane.